In 2015, the United Nations created the Sustainable Development Goals as a universal goal for action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. Goal number 12 focuses on responsible consumption and production. However, why should this be explicitly addressed? Human rights are being violated through the exploitation of human resources for industrial production. Even though we acknowledge this fact, we are also accomplices for consuming all these well-known brands.
Kathy Lee Gifford said she was shocked to learn that a clothing line bearing her name was manufactured, at least in part, in sweatshops and by underage workers.
We are now morally compelled to ask each of us, what can we do to protect labor rights in factories around the world and right here in America?
According to a published report, these children aged 10 to 13 were working as virtual slaves, stitching embroidered shirts for Gap kids.
Therefore, if this situation is notorious, how is this crime still going on?
What are the conditions that make this world a place prone to this type of human exploitation? According to the International Court of Human Rights report, 20% of the world population owns 84% of global wealth. This accumulation leads to the exclusion, marginalization, and expropriation of the majority, who represents between 60 and 70% of the world's population. Therefore, international companies, taking advantage of this situation, hire national business or set up subsidiary companies, known as maquillas, in countries with favorable conditions for their investment. This consists of no taxes, no liberal regulation, low-cost labor, cheap production opportunities in order to gain more profit and make less investment.
Trendy clothing is cheaper than ever, and cheap clothing is trendier than ever. And this is largely thanks to the rise of so-called fast fashion retailers that produce stylish, incredibly low-cost clothing like H&M, Zara, and Forever 21.
There is a method taken by these companies so as to not be rooted in those countries that makes it further difficult to place responsibility on business for human rights violations. First of all, they do not directly invest. They rent machinery, factories, and every necessary input. Secondly, in case that it is required, companies close operations, change their maquillas names, and resume activity elsewhere.
Honduras is a developing country with almost 10 million inhabitants, of which 64% of them earn less than $2 a day. In order to decrease poverty by generating employment, the government created policies about trade liberalization and promotion of free zones. Consequently, this implies no taxes and less regularization by not specifying nothing about maternity rights, labor rights, state guardianship over labor relationships, among other shortages that are a threat to employment conditions. Nevertheless, Honduras signed numerous trades in order to guarantee diverse rights such as decent working conditions, unionization, social security, education, health, fair pay, and non-discrimination at work. Moreover, in their constitution, there is an 8-hour law and specific exceptions made regarding overtime, being established as a maximum 16 extra hours. However, Honduras has 120,500 textile maquilas. The origin of these companies' capitals is diverse. These businesses employ 130,000 people, of which 69% are women. 90% of them work around 9 to 12 hours per day, being only the 10% who work less than 8 hours. Workers are not given severance pay, the corresponding maternity or disability payments, contracts, established grounds for dismissal, etc. Therefore, in 2009, there were 55,800 women fired without severance pays, of which 50,000 were family managers and 90% are estimated to have 2 children. Moreover, in 2007, 74% workers were punished for refusing to work overtime, violating the law established in their constitution and their right to strike. In order to deepen this situation, we asked an anonymous worker to tell us her salary and what her real salary should be so that she can maintain herself and her family. We listen to you.
Well, my salary is $5.90 per day, as the minimum salary states, and plus overtime, it could increase to $7.40, a number that only 20% can reach. But actually, to at least cover my family basic needs, I would need $12.23. With what I have, I am able to use $3 for food during work hours, $1.20 for transportation to work, and I would have left only $1.80 for housing, clothing, health, food, and education for children. Yesterday, I was told that the USA minimum salary is $56, so they are saving $50.10 by establishing maquilas, plus tax exemption.
India is a country in South Asia with almost 1,336 million inhabitants. In small companies in this country, employees work without a contract and can be fired from one day to another. In fact, 1 out of 6 companies are actually controlled, and the workforce reaches 8% of the average of total cost of production. Regarding India's export levels, these are far below potential and considers manufacturing the main engine of economic growth and the creation of wealth for the country. Moreover, this country has generated interest to a great extent in the global marketplace due to its low cost of labor and large population. Consequently, 10.1 million of children in India work for multiple brands worldwide. Approximately 250,000 girls work under the system of Sumangali, which implies poor families sending their daughters away for 5 years in exchange for a base salary. This can cause children to be a part of other forms of exploitation, such as sexual exploitation and the production of child pornography by trafficking. As a consequence, these infants suffer psychological and physical abuse. To learn more about this topic, we had the opportunity to hear the testimony of a female worker from one of these facilities.
I earn approximately 120 euros a month, so I would earn 4 euros a day, sometimes even less. It's truly sad and worrying that me and my co-workers spend between 14 and 16 hours a day working and still not earn enough money to maintain our families. This is due to the living wage of this country being 195.30 euros, but we are living from a minimum wage of 51.70 euros.
According to the Instituto de Estudios Legales y Sociales del Uruguay, 2005, Uruguayans do not experience exploitation as a result of the fashion industry. Nevertheless, many international brands such as Zara, H&M, Adidas, Nike, Reebok, Puma, New Balance, and Gap create the biggest competition in said industry, negatively affecting national slow fashion production. All these brands and many others which violate human rights are the main source of consumption in this country's population. To support this view, we created a Google form which we shared with friends and family. We managed to collect 39 answers. The questions asked were: do you consume one of the following brands? Surprisingly, every person answered that they consume at least 2 of the mentioned brands in the first question. The most common answers were determined by the 92% who selected Zara as one of them, 79% clicked on Nike and H&M, and 60% Adidas. Which of the following characteristics were you aware these brands have? 84% of the voters claimed that they knew there were factories in underdeveloped countries, and 81% were aware of the low salaries, while only 16 voters knew about child exploitation and 18 about the bad working conditions. Did you know that most of these characteristics are examples of human rights violation? Thankfully, 92% of our voters answered yes to this one. Do you know what the meaning of fast fashion is? 9 out of 39 voters had no idea about the term. Most of the rest of the answers we got determined a vague knowledge of its meaning, and few were actually capable of defining it correctly. With this specific study, we come to the conclusion that many people know about how the fashion industry truly works. However, there is a lack of analysis regarding the situation.
If we want these types of situations to stop from happening worldwide, we need to put pressure on businesses and governments to be transparent and respect every human being and its rights when producing these sorts of items in order to ensure a sustainable development. It is important for societies to reflect on the subject to make a change in our mindset. We must be aware of what goes behind the products we buy, who we are helping with the money we're giving up in exchange for products, not only for the economic impact we are having on the world, but also the humanitarian side of the topic. Therefore, we created a map with Montevideo sustainable clothing brands in order to foment this consumption.